Hi there, for today's read aloud, we will be reading Suki's Kimono. This is a great example of a realistic fiction. This story is made up, but the different events in the story could actually really happen. So, if you've already heard this story before, if you've read it or listened to it a different time, then what you could do now is try to think back to this story and think of the different things that happened in the story. Now, if you've never read this story, you can go ahead and make a prediction using the title, Suki's Kimono, and the cover. I'll give you some time to do that. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Suki's Kimono. So right here, I want to go over this with you. The Japanese words in this story are geta, Japanese wooden clogs, kimono, Japanese robe with wide sleeves, obachan, informal word for grandmother, obi, kimono sash, shomen, fine noodle, taiko, Japanese drum. All right, so you're going to hear those words, and those are what they mean. Also, if you forget what those different words mean, those Japanese words mean, then what you could do is use the picture to help you, okay? Suki's Kimono. On the first day of school, Suki wanted to wear her kimono. Her sisters did not approve. "You can't wear that," said Mari. "People will think you're weird. You can't wear that," said Yumi. "Everyone will laugh, and no one will play with you. You need something new, Suki. You need something cool." You think Suki cares? She just wants to wear her kimono, huh? But Suki shook her head. She didn't care for new. She didn't care for cool. She wanted to wear her favorite thing. And her favorite thing was her kimono. Suki's obachan had given her her kimono. The first time Suki wore it, her obachan took her to a street festival where they slurped bowls of slippery, cold shomen noodles and shared a cone of crunchy shaved ice topped with a sweet red bean sauce. So here she is coming down for school, and her mom's looking at her. And then right here, she's thinking back to the first time she wore her kimono. Try and get out of the way. Under strings of paper lanterns, Suki joined her obachan in a circle dance. She followed her and copied her movements, trying to be as light and as graceful. She watched the other women and children who danced, especially those who were dressed in cotton kimonos like her. So what does Suki want to wear to school? Her kimono. And why does she want to wear that? Well, one, it's her favorite thing. Two, it reminds her of her obachan, which is her grandmother, and back whenever she got to wear her kimono to this street festival and had a wonderful time. So it reminds her of something very happy. Try to get out of the way. Later, Suki sat so close to the stage that when the takio drummers performed bum, 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 she felt like she swallowed a ball of thunder, and her whole insides quaked and quivered. Before they left the festival, Suki and her obachan stopped at a souvenir stand. There were many things to choose from, but her obachan found the prettiest thing of all, a handkerchief of pale pink linen decorated with tiny maple leaves and cherry blossoms. When she gave it to Suki, she said, "This will help you remember our day." And here she is right there. Here's the drums that she talked about. She was so close to them. And here's that handkerchief. Now it was time for school. Mother checked Suki's obi one last time and took a picture of Mari, Yumi, and Suki together by the front steps. Then, as she watched, the three sisters made their way down the block to their school. Mari and Yumi stayed several steps ahead of Suki and pretended they didn't know her. But Suki didn't mind. She turned and waved to her mother before she flip-flopped along in her shiny red geta, feeling very pleased in her fan-pattern blue kimono. Once in a while, Suki would lift her arms and let the butterfly sleeves flutter in the breeze. It made her feel like she'd grown her own set of wings. See here? Are these other students being very kind by giggling? Mm-mm. But do you think Suki cares? I don't think so. And why did Suki's sisters pretend they didn't know her on the last page? Do you think they were a little bit embarrassed because they thought Suki's kimono wasn't cool or new? Maybe. Let's keep reading. When they reached the school, Mari and Yumi hurried across the yard to a group of their friends. Suki stopped and looked around. Some of the children turned and stared at her, and others giggled and pointed at her kimono. But Suki ignored them. She took a seat on a swing to wait for the bell. A girl dressed in overalls just like a pair Suki had at home sat on the swings beside her. "Hi, Suki," said the girl. "Hi, Penny," said Suki. See right here? Why do you think the children were staring at Suki and laughing at her kimono on the last page? Do you think they thought her kimono looks a little different? Maybe. Let's keep reading. "How come you dress so funny?" Penny asked. "Where did you get those shoes?" Suki lifted her feet off the sand and wiggled her toes. "I'm not dressed funny," she said. "My grandma gave me these shoes." Suki started pumping her legs. After a moment, Penny did the same, and soon they were both swinging as fast and as high as they could. Swish, swish, up and up on the swing. When the bell rang, Suki and Penny jumped off their swings and ran to the gym for the first day assembly. Once they were finally taken to their new classroom, Suki chose a desk near the window. Penny chose a desk next to Suki. As they waited for everyone to find a seat, two boys in the front of Suki turned and snickered. Snicker is a type of like laughing, behind their hands. One of the boys reached over and snatched at Suki's sleeve. "Look at this," he said. "She's a bat." And now, is that very nice? No, not nice at all. Suki felt her cheeks burn, but she did not respond. Instead, she concentrated on sitting up straight and tall, the way her obi-chan always did. It was easy to do with an obi wrapped snug around her middle. Her obi was golden yellow, and in its folds, Suki had tucked away her pale pink handkerchief. "Welcome to the first grade," said the teacher. "Hey, you're in first grade too. How fun is that?" "My name is Mrs. Poggio," she smiled. "Let's introduce ourselves and tell everyone what we did this summer." When it was her turn to speak, Suki stood up and told the teacher her name. "Hello, Suki," said Mrs. Poggio. "What did you do this summer?" "My grandma visited us," she said, straightening her sleeves. "She brought me my kimono and my geta." Suki raised her foot to show the teacher her wooden clog. So I have a quick question. What is an obi? Remember earlier she said, it is easy to do with an obi wrapped snug around her middle. Her obi was golden yellow, and in its folds, Suki had tucked away her pale pink handkerchief. Is this her obi? Yes, and we know this because of the way she describes it. She tells us the color, and she tells us it's wrapped around her middle. So if you were confused, you're like, what is an obi? Make sure you listen to the words, and it can kind of help you figure out what we're reading. Somewhere in the classroom, someone laughed, but Suki took a deep breath and continued. "The best thing was that she took me to a festival, and there were dancing girls dressed like me, and they danced like this." She took a few steps and swayed her arms sideways. Next page. "Look, now she's dancing," someone said, but Suki didn't hear. She hummed the music she remembered hearing at the festival. She remembered how it felt to dance barefoot in the open air on fresh-cut grass that tickled her toes. She tried to picture the other dancers, how they moved forward in the circle with the rhythm of the music, how they stamped their feet, first right, then left, swung their arms first up, then down, how they stepped back, and back, and back, then clapped. When Suki couldn't remember the next step, she made it up, just to keep dancing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, stop. She's having so much fun. When she finished, the room seemed very quiet. Everyone was watching her. Suki sat down, wondering if she was in trouble. Do you see her cheeks turning red? But Mrs. Poggio said, "That was wonderful, Suki," and she started to clap. Then so did Penny. And after a moment, so did the entire class. Look at her smiling. She's so proud of herself. So how do the children's feelings change after they watch Suki's dance? Remember, they were kind of teasing her and not being so nice, but after they watched her dance and talk about her experience at that festival, how did it change? They think it's cool now, don't they? They're starting to clap. They're like, wow, that's very cool. All right, last page. After school, as the three sisters walked home together, Mari and Yumi grumbled about their first day. "No one even noticed my new sweater," said Mari. "No one even noticed my cool shoot," said Yumi. But Suki just smiled as she clip-clopped along behind them. Suki pulled out the pale pink handkerchief from her obi and held it up over her head to catch the wind. And in her blue cotton kimono and in her shiny red geta, Suki danced all the way home. So, I hope you enjoyed the story, Suki's Kimono, and I hope that you enjoyed learning more about realistic fiction, because this was a perfect example of a realistic fiction. Yes, the story is made up, but all the different events that happen in the story could happen. Did the characters seem real? Were they behaving, acting like real people? Was the setting, could that be a real place in today's world? There's a school and outside and neighborhood and their house. Those are all real settings in today's world. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed today's Read Aloud.